But
Of course.
I know.
But it's
Crazy.
never just be straightforward.
I know. Okay. So I'll just stop, and if you just want to answer them, that's okay. So for the following questions, please answer keeping in mind your perspective of what community members believe and not what you personally believe. Just
Okay.
so you know. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a concern is gentrification to the members of the east side of Jackson County, with 1 being not concerned at all or 10 being very concerned? And I guess I should ask prior that you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Well, okay, just want to make sure. Sorry. I don't want to assume, and you anyway, go on. Sorry.
Oh, what?
Yes. Sorry.
So like just speaking for the clients that I know, I think a lot of them, I'd say probably like a 2 or a 3.
Okay.
It's just not really something that's gonna, for them right now in their situation, they're too close to crisis
Okay.
to really like see that as something to be concerned or about at all.
Absolutely, makes sense.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask about, this is the current community efforts about it, and then by efforts I mean like programs, activities, services, and that you are aware or may be aware or anything like that. So are there efforts in this part of this county, the east side, that address gentrification? Do you think there are efforts?
I'm not aware of any. I know that there's definitely a lot of work that's maybe been suggested, but I don't know of anything.
Okay. Is there anyone in this side of Jackson County, in this part of the community, that is trying to get something started to address people bringing in money to essentially get rid of half the county's population? So
oh, it's been a minute since I know it was like a local representative that was in the district. No, because that was back. I know that there was at least there are some like state representative or Missouri representatives that are concerned about it and are taking steps, but I moved out of the one in particular, I can't remember his name even, but
yes,
I moved out of his district, so I have not kept up with what he's been doing, but as far as I know, there's like nothing in my current district to address it or discuss it.
Okay. Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a concern is it to the leadership is gentrification to the leadership of the community, based on 1 being like not concerned at all and 10 being very concerned?
I think it depends on what specific zip code you
Okay.
talk to.
Okay.
I think there's definitely some, like, if you look more towards, like downtown.
Yep.
It's in the sense of, oh, we just want to make our city nicer, prettier, better.
Yep.
And then you get more eastern, and it is a lot more of a like, hey, where's the affordable housing? Like,
yep, correct. Yeah. I get that. And how much of a priority? I guess you kind of answered that based on the like depending on which section you're in. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to read a list of ways that leadership might show its support or lack of support about gentrification. Can you please tell me whether none, few, some, many, or most leaders would show support for this that way? So, so again, none. Oh my gosh. Totally lost the thing. Anyway, okay, so at least passively support efforts without necessarily being active in that support.
I'd say some at least.
Some, okay. Participate in developing, improving, or implementation efforts, for example, by being a member of a group that's working towards these efforts.
Only a few, I'd say.
Okay. support allocating resources to fund community efforts?
Only a few.
Play a key role as a leader or driving force in planning, developing, or implementing efforts.
I mean, I think those that care are very active. So those few, those handful of leaders that are just like, yes, we need to do this, and are
Makes sense.
yeah.
Does the leadership support expanded efforts in the community to address gentrification?
Only those few.
I don't disagree. So, and how do you think their support looks? Is it passively? Is it actually being involved, being a driving force, or none of that?
I'd say that there's definitely some that just kind of, verbally say, hey, this is something we care about. But those few, there are those few that are very active and speaking out about and trying to create change in that area.
For sure. And who are the leaders that you know of that support the issue? I know you said the one representative.
Yeah, there's a couple representatives that I know of, but or like I don't know the names off the top of my head because I'm horrible at names.
Okay.
But yeah, there are a few.
Do you think there's leaders that might oppose addressing the gentrification, and how do they show their opposition?
Yes. A lot of it is, I think, just kind of disguised by the, if we make our city better, like we'll have more money to, have jobs and things like that. So it focuses this more idea like, we can, make it beautiful, make the city beautiful, job creation, we'll have jobs for people, and then we'll be able to afford housing as we make it more beautiful. And it's just really also not taking into account that they probably wouldn't hire these people who they're forcing out to take these jobs. So yeah.
Yes. So the next couple questions are about community climate. So how much of a priority is addressing this issue to community members? So people that are out here among us.
I mean, again, a lot of my clients are just, it's crisis. So it's like, if it's not directly in front of them as a big issue, like it's not something that they're going to be focused on. And a lot of times they see other, like that big picture is not necessarily there. And a lot of my clients would probably like point towards like smaller things than something big in the versus gentrification.
For sure. I'm going to read a list of ways in community members might show their support or lack of support. Can you please tell me whether, and it's again, none, a few, some, many, or most. And so how many, just to guess, community members at least passively support community efforts without being active in that support?
I'd say some. Again, it's just kind of that, like those who are more aware. Definitely closer to like my community where I'm at. I know it's something that's discussed more. Because like if you look around like the Truce Paseo area, that's a little bit closer where I'm at. There is a lot more discussion with that. We also have families who are able to own homes, who are kind of a little bit above or a little bit ahead of like where my clients are on socioeconomic status, so that they have some of those resources to purchase homes. But if we get, I know parts of Truce, they're just really trying to like beautify it and like demolishing old buildings, putting up new ones. And so I know that's definitely something that like as we're around there, people are getting worried about like, what is this going to mean for buying a home or for taking the next steps I want to. Yeah,
correct. It's hard stuff. Participate in developing, improving, or implementing efforts. For example, attending group meeting or work towards these efforts. How many?
I mean, the clients that I serve, none of them are doing, none of them have the energy or the capacity to really put efforts into that. But yeah, like I said, people closer to my community, there is some.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how many do you think play a role as a leader? And if you can answer both, since they're, I mean, they're not that far, right? Like it's all right here in the middle of it. So, but play a role in the leader or driving force in planning, development, and implementing?
So yeah, again, like my client wise, like I don't, like they wouldn't, I mean, it's too lofty. It's too far out of their zone of really awareness right now. I feel like, because like part of it is that they're not, they're taking the buildings that like we provide. And so they don't necessarily see all of those wheels and like, just like, yeah. And then like individuals closer, like to where I'm at, those Paseo crews, like there is more of that, but yeah, I feel like very few people are really able to dedicate their time to that who live in the community, because a lot of it is like, it's people working long hours and then not necessarily having that capacity to really,
for sure,
really be active in that.
Yeah, for sure. And then how do you think on that scale again are willing to pay more, for example, in taxes, because that's it, to help fund community efforts?
Oh Lord. It really does depend on the population. I feel like a lot of people that I know would be okay with that, but there is, I mean, I don't know exactly how I would put like percentage or a number on it, but all the people that I know would be like, yeah, if we can put some money towards that, yes, let's do it. But I know that there is definitely those who would be like, no, not at all.
For sure. And about how many community members would support expanding efforts in the community? So would you say, again, none, a few, some, many, and most? So somewhere in the a few to some, probably?
Yeah.
Okay. And then would they support passively? Like if it came up, yes, they'd talk about it, but, or are they more of the active role? Like, yes, they want to take a step and give more in taxes or what? Like, would you say those few or some people, which ones were they, where would the majority land on those? I'm sorry.
I think it would be more passing, where it's just like if the discussion were to arise, but they're not necessarily like having the discussion or like bringing it up themselves.
Yep, for sure. Are the community members who oppose or might oppose addressing gentrification, how, or are there some that you think would oppose this? And then how do they show that they're in opposition of it?
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, a very strong voice that is opposed, but again, they're not verbally saying that, but it kind of comes at it from the other side, where they're not only not going to talk about gentrification, but it's like, we're debating, or we're going to have legislation that's going to start talking for local legislation, talking about, oh, do we want to move like the Royal Stadium to downtown? So it's like, it's not even, they're just like not talking about that. It's like, oh no, let's put all of our money into like this big project.
Yes.
That's just like,
exactly.
You're already paying for stadium stuff already. Like you don't need to spend more money on a stadium to be closer to downtown. No. Yeah. So it's more like it's not even on the radar. They're like, hey, look at this over here. Yes. Let's do this project. So just like steamrolling past that to like.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yes. Are there any circumstances in which members of the community might think the issue should be tolerated?
Like, I guess.
So the example that we kind of came up with was, so say the Truce Paseo, that kind of area, right? Like they're starting to put new businesses and let people come in and put new businesses. So, and do the, beautification, all that kind of stuff. So is there any circumstances that you would think that's okay? Or that not you, but the community members think that's okay, because ultimately it gets to the bigger picture. So that essentially would tolerate it in that, like, they don't really like it. They don't really want it to happen, but they know, like, for big picture wise, it may need to happen. That makes sense.
I think there's definitely between like some and most,
Okay.
who would just be like, who would kind of say like, oh, it's necessary evil, or like, it's gotta, it's gonna happen at some point, you should do that, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, so the next one says to describe the community. So I'm gonna have you, if you can describe the community of like our clients here or residents here, and then where you like, because I think you have good views on both. Because you spend a lot of time in both, right? Like the only time we have in both those things. So anyway, yeah. So start with here, like where we are here, the community here, like what does that look like as far as like gender, age group, any of that? Is there any consistency on that stuff?
I would say, focus more like towards Penton and stuff, or the Holland.
Okay.
That's fine. Little further south. But I'd say it's predominantly like, especially in our area, there's not a lot of kids. There are, but it's primarily like older, older adults, or like the individuals that I know are like younger, like 20s and 30s. It's single or married without kids. There's in the area, but I'm at.
What about over like Church Paseo, that area that you live into?
There's definitely, it's an interesting thing of like where if there's like the older generation in that community is predominantly Black, and the younger generation is predominantly white with kids.
Okay.
And there's some mix kind of in between there, but that's kind of the general like, yeah.
Okay. No, makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. On a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 is that there's no knowledge, 10 being there's detailed knowledge. How much would you think the average community member knows about the issue? So we'll do here, like, or Benton, or I'm sorry, Holland. I keep saying Benton, sorry. Holland. What do you think they on an average?
I mean, my clients have very little.
Okay.
Other community members in the area, I mean, it's no secret about the redlining that happened.
Yeah.
And so I'd say like the knowledge about that is really high.
Okay.
But I think maybe like the more, I'd say general community, it is pretty, there is a pretty high knowledge of just what has happened in the past and kind of what that means for today.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Would you say community members know nothing, a little, or some about the following things? So in general, the signs and symptoms of gentrification, do they know, again, nothing, a little, some, or a lot?
I'd say more of my clients are going to be very little.
Okay. Those signs and symptoms is what I ask, and then the causes is the next thing.
Oh, yeah, they might have a very small idea of that, but yeah, not a big picture.
So the next one is the consequences. So I guess, I'm gonna ask a follow-up question. Do they probably have very little, like, to be able to name those are consequences, but do you think they know that they're living the consequences at times, or about to, maybe?
Yes and no.
But they just don't.
It's kind of one of those like very far in the back of their mind. It's not, again, it's not the crisis right in front of them.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then how much do you think occurs locally? So we'll just say at Holland. How much locally do you think? So a lot, nothing, a lot, some, or little, do you think affects that population?
It like that they're aware of, or that they're
again, nothing. Okay. It's fine. I'm just asking the questions. So and that the effects of gentrification on their family or their friends, how much do you think they know?
a little bit.
Okay.
I know a lot of my clients, either their family is pretty well established.
Yep.
And like already owns their home outright, or lives just further away from the
Okay.
area. So
Yeah.
I think they have a vague idea, but
Okay.
a lot of times no.
What are the misconceptions in the community and community members? So like why it occurs, how much of it is locally, and then what the consequences are. So how much do you think there's misconceptions? What are the misconceptions? If you know of any.
I mean, it's like, I think some of it is that I'm like,
Well, that's
so many
okay. I mean,
misconceptions. But yeah, some of it is just a lot of, because they've been in the program for a while,
Mhm.
they're just kind of like, well, this doesn't, normal community things don't have anything to do with me.
got it.
Because, it's just Truman housing, and Truman's gonna pay for it, Truman's gonna deal with it. And not necessarily seeing that affects what we're able to afford and who will rent to us and our clientele.
For sure. And then what type of information is available as far as to the community, as far as newspaper articles, brochures, posters, anything like that you're aware of, that they have can get their hands on?
Very little. I know the Star did something a little bit ago just on like COVID and like rent and evictions and support and different things. So there are some resources available. But again, like I don't know how many people in that community are really like reading the Star or have access to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, those in that, and especially around my clients' meetings, it's like, well, they might, but they probably won't know that that's
makes sense. It does.
information
Yeah.
that's available.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, okay. So resources, the last group of questions is about resource. I guess there's a few in general, but the last one's about this. Are resources for efforts. So time, money, people, space, etc. So how are the current efforts funded? And is this funding likely to continue in the future?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, good. I don't understand. I'm going to read you a list of resources and that could be used to address it in your community or in this community. Please indicate if there's a none, a little, some, a lot available. So volunteers.
There would be some.
Okay. Financial donations from organizations or businesses. Okay. Grant funding.
I think there'd be more, but it'd be hard to.
Yeah, no. Experts.
I mean, maybe a few, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then space to like hold events, hold town community halls.
I think that would be the easiest.
Okay.
To be able to gain access to. I feel like a lot of local churches and stuff would be able to be like, hey, yeah, we've got space for meetings.
For sure. And do you think community members and leadership, would they support the resources?
I mean, those who are in support of
Okay.
it would.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, no, I mean, that would be the logical line of thinking there. So on a scale of 1 to 5, so 1 is no effort, 5 is great effort. How much effort are community members and leaders putting into doing the following things? I'm going to list them. So how much effort is put into seeking volunteers for current or future efforts to address it?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about soliciting donations from businesses or other organizations? Okay. Writing grant proposals. Do you think anybody's doing that?
Yeah, I believe people are doing that, but
Okay.
it's again, it's the very few.
And then what about training community members or recruiting experts? Think anybody's doing that?
I'm sure they are, but
No, it's
I
fine.
don't
No,
know.
it's good. It's okay. And are you aware of any proposals of action plans that have been submitted or will be submitted for funding?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So, and then this is just some policies, random questions. So what formal or informal policies, practices, and laws related to this issue are in place in your community? Do you know any?
No.
Okay. Are there any segments of the community for which these policies, practices, and laws may not apply? For example, due to socioeconomic status or ethnicity or age? Any of the laws that like restrict away from that stuff, from that affecting those people?
I mean, I feel like it's all gonna be
Mhm.
supporting those who have money.
Yep. Okay, makes sense. Sorry. Is there a need to expand these policies, practices, and laws?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay. And do you know of any plans that are, I guess, community known, not necessarily by the leaders that are doing it, but if any that is out or no? Okay. And then how does the community viewpoint
See here, right?
for a little bit?
Okay, I'm gonna go get some lunch.
Yep, I'll be here.
Okay.
30 minutes or so, probably. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I'm just running down the street and coming back.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, I'll be here.
Yes, I'll be back.
And how does the community view these policies, practices, and laws?
If we knew about them,
Yes, correct.
we would support them.
Yeah, okay, and these are demographics of you, so, and they're optional, you don't have to answer them, so gender,
Like mine.
yes,
Oh, female.
okay,
Yes.
yes.
Sorry. I was like, what?
And then what is your work title?
Qualified mental health professional.
Okay, and then what race or ethnicity are you?
White.
Okay, and then what's your age range? And it's got, you can just tell me, then I'll put it in the age range. Do you know, do you care? You don't have to. You don't have to.
I'm 32.
Okay, and do you live in this community?
I live near the Truce Paseo.
Okay, yeah, so technically, yes, you're still in the line from where we were trying to cut off, so.
Yeah.
And then how long have you lived in this community? So like just in there, anywhere, and then in Jackson County, you know?
A couple of years while I was in Wyandotte, but for the most part, I probably lived here for like the last 7-8 years.
Okay, and do you work here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. And then that says, do you live here again? But
Yes, I do.
yeah, that's silly. Okay, all right. Let me just, okay, awesome. We're stopping that. Now I gotta figure out how to.
It's definitely something